everyone, I'm Erica Humphries and I work in the AML CFT Policy Office as the Strategy and Policy Lead, and I'm here with Lucie Kennedy.
Hi Erica, thanks. Hi, I'm Lucie Kennedy. I'm a Senior Officer at Customs and Immigration Division. So we're the division that's responsible for implementing sanctions in the Isle of Man, including publishing guidance and outreach like these videos. We also administer the sanctions licences, and we do enforcement of any breaches of sanctions law as well.
Great, thank you. So we're here to talk to you today about proliferation and proliferation finance risks, and what you need to know, and most importantly, what you can do to mitigate any risks that your business or the Isle of Man may face from these activities. Essentially, proliferation is the involvement in the development and use of chemical, biological, radiological, or nuclear weapons in contravention of international obligations or domestic laws. Proliferation financing, or PF, is any activity that provides funds or financial services for this purpose. A separate video has been prepared explaining proliferation and proliferation finance. It also explains how the Isle of Man plays its role in combating proliferation and PF. You can find a link to this video in the description and via the QR code on the screen.
This video will focus on the type of goods, services and technologies that can be involved in proliferation and PF, and the sectors that may be exposed to such activities. Proliferation and PF are complex and involve both financial and non-financial sectors. Many of these sectors are regulated by the Financial Services Authority and the Gambling Supervision Commission, who require business to take measures to guard against this activity. Other videos in this series explain the measures to be taken and highlight some of the PF risks for the regulated sectors. Other industry sectors not regulated by the FSA and GSE may be less familiar with the risks relating to proliferation and PF. We hope this video will assist these sectors in identifying, assessing and understanding their own proliferation risks, and be able to put in place measures to mitigate them.
These risks, or red flags and typologies, are drawn from a number of sources, which include the Financial Action Task Force guidance, the Royal United Services Institute, and the UN Panel of Experts reports. The risks include the export and trade in certain goods that can be used for both civilian and military purposes, known as dual-use goods, as well as other activities that may enable proliferation activities. Three sectors that are particularly at risk from proliferation activities are the maritime industry, the manufacturing or engineering sectors, and trust and corporate service providers. Proliferation actors can exploit the maritime sector to enable the movement of goods involved in proliferation activities, or to export goods to raise funds for their activities. The provision of insurance or reinsurance services to vessels owned or controlled by sanctioned entities can be used to raise funds and also enables the movement of goods. The risk to the manufacturing and engineering sectors arises primarily from the potential for the production and export of dual-use goods or their component parts, software and technology to high-risk proliferation countries. The main countries of concern are the Democratic People's Republic of Korea and Iran. However, sectors should also consider the risks posed by Russia, China, Syria, Pakistan, Turkey and the UAE. Trust and corporate service providers are also at risk from proliferation activities through the creation of corporate structures that proliferation actors use to obscure the true ownership of companies. So, Lucy, while there may be challenges in detecting proliferation and PF activity due to the lengths that proliferation actors often go to conceal it, there are some risk indicators or red flags that we can look out for. So one of those would be your customer's profile. Are you able to explore that a little bit more?
Yeah, so there's lots of little indicators that you know maybe the customer isn't actually who they say they are. So if they're particularly vague about what their trading activities are, they may be a new business that you don't really know anything about. They might not have much of a profile online, for example. So often enough open source information is very useful in terms of identifying whether some businesses are legitimate. They also may be companies that have been incorporated in jurisdictions that are not where the goods are destined for example. A company may be a shell or a front company that's been set up to try and obscure the true ownership of where these companies are, who they belong to, etc.
And account or transaction activity is another way for companies to find some of those red flag indicators.
Yeah, absolutely. So there may be payments in relation to the products or services that are being provided by businesses that are not actually being paid from the country that you're expecting. They may be making payments from countries that are countries of concern, like you've already mentioned there before. The location as well of any of the representatives of that particular business doesn't match where the business is supposedly located and where the goods are potentially destined for. It's not an absolute, but it's a potential indicator as well.
And tell us a little bit more about the maritime sector and where some of the red flag indicators might be present in that sector.
Yeah, so the maritime sector is very interesting, obviously, in particular in relation to the DPRK. There may be ships carrying the goods that are actually registered in countries considered to be part of the dark fleet of ships. They used to be called flags of convenience, but they tend to be called the dark fleet these days. Now these are suspected of circumventing sanctions. We not only see this with the DPRK, but also see it more with Russia as well. Some of the countries that are currently considered to be on the register, if you like, of dark fleet include Greece, Malta, Liberia and the Marshall Islands. Also in relation to goods being shipped, there may be some inconsistencies in the types of documentation. So you may see differences in the contracts, in the invoices, in the shipping bills, etc. All relating to either different volumes of goods, the price of the goods, the destination of those goods. So all of these things are potential indicators that what the goods that are being shipped are not actually the ones that are actually being sent, or they're going to a different destination than was expected in the first place. Other indicators include transshipment of goods through particular countries that have weak AML/CFT controls and export controls, or that don't implement the FATF standards at all, or into a good standard.
Great, thank you. So lots to look out for there. And finally, we talk about trade finance and how that relates to proliferation financing.
Yeah, in a similar way to the shipping documents, there may be inconsistencies in some of the trade documents as well, including again the final destination of where the goods are going to. The payment details maybe from parties that are not actually in your contract or in the agreement. Where are these parties appearing from? So there's quite a lot to be looking out for, and just in the basic paperwork that you would normally have with any kind of goods business.
Great, thank you. So we will be looking at mitigations later, but from what Lucie has spoken about, really, if there's anything that doesn't quite look right, it probably warrants further investigation.
Yeah, if it's too good to true, it usually is.
Usually is. And in respect of typologies, the UN panel of experts are a really useful source of information for typologies in relation to especially the DPRK. So we've selected a couple of examples that may be relevant to businesses in the island, and Lucie will be discussing these. So starting off with suspect vessels transmitting false information.
Yeah, so the UN panel of experts reports, the latest one is from March 2024. So they mentioned there's a lot of vessels who are either turning off their tracking systems, their AIS systems, or they're even transmitting false information on that tracker. And according to the UN reports, they're potentially even disguising or moving effectively that tracker to reflect somewhere else. Wow. So they're able to even do that. So that's something that to be careful of. There are also believed to be ship-to-ship transfers occurring in international waters, and often in the hours of darkness, to hide what they're actually doing. DPRK vessels are also regularly turning their trackers off around those seas near North Korea as well. Some vessels as well, they've been known to flag hop. This is where they change the flag registries in quick succession, so they're moving from country to country in terms of their flag status as well.
And Lucie, the DPRK is still reliant on importing certain goods in order to develop its ballistic missile program. So what are some of the typologies around that?
Yeah, I mean, dual-use goods in particular it's quite a fascinating area, to be honest with you. There's so many items that can be used both for civilian and for military purposes, and quite normal goods as well. The DPRK, obviously, they still need some of these materials to be able to continue their programs. So things like ball bearings, stainless steel, and gyroscopes, which are quite legitimate items in their own right, are being used and required by the DPRK. So there are efforts there to get those goods into the DPRK via whatever means they can. We've also seen recently computer chips from everyday items, including dishwashers, washing machines, etc. They have been identified as being used in military equipment on the battlefields in the Russia-Ukraine war as well. So there are obviously lots and lots of ways of obtaining the necessary equipment, not just through the normal thought patterns. Obviously they're having to find other ways to get these pieces of equipment into the country.
And pieces of equipment that we wouldn't necessarily associate with military uses, so equipment that feels quite benign in many circumstances.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
The use of cybercrime, particularly ransomware, to raise funds for the DPRK nuclear program is certainly something that we have become increasingly aware of, and indeed our Office for Cybersecurity Information Assurance in the island here is also very aware of. So what does that look like for proliferation typologies?
Yeah, again in the UN panel of experts report, it highlights that from 2017 The DPRK have potentially raised about $3 billion through ransomware, cybercrime activities. There's lots of information in that report about how they go about it. It's a really interesting read. So again, it's a case of being vigilant about your data protection and your data security.
Yeah, great. So thank you for those typologies, Lucy. Really interesting. We're going to talk a little bit about how businesses can protect themselves. One of the first ways is having knowledge and awareness of proliferation and proliferation finance. This is key to putting in place measures to address risk. Customs and Immigration publishes a number of helpful guides on this subject. When it comes to financial transactions, have processes in place to conduct regular sanctions screening against the UK sanctions list. Also, know your customer. Include checks such as knowing where they operate, what their business is, who their customers are as well. If you do trade in goods or related services, have processes in place to verify what the goods are, where they are going, and whether the customer is legitimate. You can check whether your goods are subject to any export or trade controls using various tools, all of which can be found on the Export and Trade Control webpage. As Lucy was saying, protect yourself from cybercrime. Use strong passwords, have good up-to-date antivirus software, and back up your data regularly. Continue to maintain an awareness and understanding of proliferation and proliferation finance. Update your policies and procedures and provide regular training to staff. Review your procedures to ensure that your staff know what you have to do if you have a sanctions match or if you have a suspicion about a potential client, and how to report this. Reports should be made to the Financial Intelligence Unit. A number of useful links to websites has been included to assist you with your own risk assessments. So that brings us to the end. Thank you for watching this video. We hope you found it useful.
Thanks, Erica.
Thanks, Lucy.